Hey, this is Dallas. I'm gonna be making a bunch of videos this morning. I'm gonna try to cut them down into sections so it'd be easier for you guys to just look at one thing at a time. Try not to talk too much, try to just get straight to the point. The first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna basically generate a project using Yeoman. And I'll teach you how to do that. You will need Node.js installed. You don't need anything else other than it installed. Again, Windows, Mac, Linux, it doesn't matter what your operating system is going to be. Bash shell or command prompt, PowerShell, whatever you want to use, is fine with me. For this, it doesn't really matter. And actually, through the entire project, it's not going to matter. Now, if you're using Visual Studio, you can pretty much skip this because Visual Studio will do all of this for you. I'm just basically teaching you, if you're not using Visual Studio, or even if you are and you're wanting to understand what it does, why it creates what files it creates, that sort of thing, I'm going to teach you that. And I think it's better to start a new project from the ground up until you actually learn it, and then you can use it. So one of the things that I learned at Apple was I like to just jump into Visual Studio, click new project, have it generate all this stuff for me. Great, but when it really came down to me editing it or really understanding it, I didn't understand it that much. So one of the things I've learned is that I'm going to be home for today, so I'm sick, so if I step away from the computer or whatnot, that is why, because I might have to use the bathroom or whatever. Anyways, just putting that out there. So you might ask, what is Yo? Yo is just a way to generate code, and you can use it for almost anything. People generate their own stuff, upload it here. If you want to be a contender, go for it. I'm only going to be showing you aspnet, so this one here. It's basically what we're going to get. One thing I want to say is the internet is your friend, so if you don't know how to do something, then do it. And by all means, I'm not going to be redoing these videos, so if I mess up or I forget something, forgive me. We all make mistakes. I might use the internet, whatever. That's what I always do, especially when you're working with new stuff. Until you do this like 10,000 times, you're probably going to look back at the reference and say, did I do that right? And I think it's a good thing to make sure that you're double checking your work, because you just don't want to assume things are right. That might have to have installed. So what you need to do is, if you're on Windows, that's a thing that I need to look up. So on Windows, do you need to run cmd as admin when installing things globally? I don't think you do, but I probably would run it as admin when installing global variables. Now, when you're getting to your local, because you want global to run for everything, so I would run it in admin. And I know for Linux, you're going to need it. You're going to have to run the sudo command, which is just basically admin rights. So make sure that you have Node installed. You can do node -- version. Bam. Okay. So we're going to use Node Package Manager. It's npm. I have to do sudo Node Package Manager install -g yo. this is going to ask me for my password. Okay, so it's going to go out there and it's going to fetch this stuff. Boom, boom, boom. Boom. Everything looks alright. Your screen might look a little different. I already had it installed, so yeah. Now the generator we're going to use is aspnet. Now, if you're going to be using this tool, you're like, you can always come here and look for new stuff. For instance, we're going to use aspnet. So you're like, how do we get aspnet? So I have it installed already, so if I actually did it the way that you're supposed to do, then right. But you do have to install the generators. And for instance, I don't think I have Node installed, so if I did like yo node, it's going to tell me that it's not installed and basically run this command to install it. We want to go ahead and install aspnet globally, just because you can go to any folder and run it, and you don't have to keep reinstalling Node modules in different folders. So I'm going to go ahead and do Node package manager install -g generator aspnet. Now I've already have it installed, so, but anyways. Wait for that to install. Bam. Alright. Got it in there. Updated itself. Alright, we're going to clear it. Now, get to building the project, or generating our code. I have a folder that I built in Documents, Tutorial, Projects. Alright. So, I'm going to open up a new terminal from this window. Bam. Okay. From here, I'm going to run... Now, you don't have to create a new project for your folder. You don't have to create a new folder for your project, because it'll create this for you. You're going to do yo aspnet. Boom. Alright. Now, it will create all kinds of stuff for you. And the list goes on, you know, bam, 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 bam. We're going to start with the empty web application. For future references, web application basic is the same thing as web application, except for it doesn't include membership authorization, which is basically identity that allows people to log in, log off, sign up, that sort of thing. We're not going to be using that. I mean, depending on where the project goes, we might include it, because that's the way that is definitely what you want to do when you want people to log in and log off, is to use identity. It's the most secure, fastest way. You can set up all kinds of stuff. Microsoft did a lot of work for you. You can edit it however you like, but that's definitely the way you want to do it. Also, for database queries, stuff like that, we will use Entity Framework. It is highly recommended. .NET applications, if you've not used Entity Framework, it is a very steep learning curve, but once you learn it, you will be glad that you know it, because it is very simple. You do not have to type repeatedly SQL. You don't have to do that. And it's very, and even people who are reading, so Entity Framework, the way that it does is it generates the SQL for you. So the people who is writing your applications really don't know your database, right? They don't know the SQL to actually get things back. You're just creating objects from the database. So that's technically what it does. So it looks at the database, says, oh, this is what it is. But we will be creating a database from a code first point of view. So code first. We're going to actually code our database. So that's the Entity Framework is code first module. There used to be like design and this other stuff where you would be able to like design a database. We're not doing that. And actually that is unsupported now. Microsoft's making a lot of moves into open source, to a lot of things. I suggest that we go this route because that's the way that it's going. You can see that web forms is no longer supported, so anyone that's been doing web forms is, if they're going to continue to do web forms, they're stuck with they're stuck because they can't. Newer versions of Windows highly probably is going to end support as well. Microsoft doesn't support it within Visual Studio, and or if you even pay for the subscription services through Microsoft, they're not supporting it. So you're going to probably want to use the standard MVC. You're going to want to use the Entity Framework code first, stuff like that. Now you might say, well, everything changes, but please understand that these concepts have actually been around just as long, but people didn't use them really. They used the easier approach to things. And like I said, they had their pros and cons, and it had its own type of errors and bugs with it. But it was more, I guess it was simpler, and people were like, oh, I'm going to create web forms because you can just do a drag and drop interface. The same thing with the desktop applications where you can just drag a button over. But it had its own, it was not clean, it wasn't a good design, it had its own issues. So Microsoft's like, we're going to clean it up and we're going to use it this way because this is the way that it should be done. So just understand that this is not anything new per se, it's just now it's like the standard way of doing it. Alright, so we're going to do the empty web application. Alright, and I'm going to call mine Candyland. Boom. Bam. Alright. Alright, I'm going to end this video here. And that's pretty much all you have to do is whenever you want to create a new .NET application is yo aspnet and tell it the project you want. You can go ahead if you want to experiment. You can create some other projects. For instance, if I want to do yo aspnet, yeah, and then I want to create the full web application. I want to use Bootstrap. I'm going to call this Candyland 2. Boom. And it's going to install Bower. It's going to install a lot of stuff. There's a lot. Now we're going to be doing all this. We're going to be installing Bower. We're going to be using all this stuff, but we're just going to build it from the frame up. We're not going to use all this stuff. As you can see, they have Entity Framework already installed. They have a lot of stuff. So if you open this, it's going to be a little bit huge. It already created you a database, temporary database anyway, to use with Entity Framework. There you go. You sort of see it's just a very small package compared to this. This is a lot of stuff in here. But we'll go over that. We're going to be creating this. You'll see this. Not 100% sure what kind of database we're going to use. For the tutorial, I'm also going to teach you how to use Azure. Azure is pretty cool. Probably the future of things too. Also, Azure has machine learning as well. So if you're into that sort of thing in the future, I can also teach you machine learning within Azure. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to end this video. We'll pick back up right where we left off.